In 1970, a man named Julius Schacknow stood before a crowd and declared himself the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. He claimed to be an oracle of God sent to save the world and rid it of evil, promising eternal salvation to his followers through sexual encounters with him. Schacknow's outrageous claims attracted hundreds of believers, leading to the formation of a cult known as the Work. Over time, he built a $100 million real estate empire by exploiting his loyal followers. But beneath the surface of his promises of salvation lurked sinister secrets. How did this self-proclaimed Messiah manage to convince so many people to believe his extraordinary claims? This is the true story of Julius Christ and his doomsday cult, the Work. Julius Schacknow's journey to becoming a self-proclaimed Messiah began in the most ordinary of circumstances. Born in 1924, he served in the U.S. Navy during World War II before returning to civilian life. But something changed in Schacknow during the 1950s. He claimed to have experienced intense divine revelations that convinced him he was destined for a greater purpose. Schacknow said God spoke to him directly, telling him he was chosen for a special mission. This moment set him on a path that would lead to extraordinary claims. Schacknow started small, organizing Bible study groups and attracting followers with his charismatic personality. He had a talent for making people feel special, chosen, and part of something greater than themselves. His teachings blended Christian fundamentalism with elements of science fiction and the occult, creating a unique belief system that captivated his followers. As his following grew, Schacknow's claims became more grandiose. He told his followers he could heal the sick and predict the future. People flocked to him, drawn by the promise of miracles and spiritual enlightenment. But Schacknow's appeal went beyond his teachings. He employed manipulation tactics and intense indoctrination. He would hold marathon preaching sessions, sometimes lasting up to 6 hours, wearing down his audience's resistance. Schacknow created a us versus them mentality, positioning himself as the sole source of truth and salvation. He gradually isolated his followers from their families and the outside world. As his influence grew, Schacknow's teachings became more extreme. He began to hint at his true identity, dropping clues that he was more than just a prophet. Then, in a dramatic moment, Schacknow made his boldest claim yet. Standing before his devoted followers, he declared himself to be Jesus Christ returned to earth. Shockingly, many believed him. Schacknow used fear as a powerful tool, warning of impending apocalyptic events and positioning himself as the only path to salvation. This created a sense of urgency and dependence among his followers, who came to see him as their literal savior. He pointed to his miracles as proof of his divinity, and used his followers' testimonies to reinforce his claims. With his divine status established, Schacknow was ready to take his control to the next level. He formally organized his followers into a group called the Work. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a dark and twisted journey that would span decades and impact countless lives. But how did Schacknow convince so many people to accept such an outrageous claim? With Julius Schacknow firmly established as the divine leader, the Work quickly evolved from a seemingly devout religious community into a complex network of businesses, all centered around Julius Schacknow's growing appetite for wealth and power. As membership swelled, Schacknow encouraged followers to cut ties with family and friends, donating their time, money, and labor to his various ventures. Many sold their homes and businesses, pouring everything into the cult. This influx of resources allowed Schacknow to rapidly expand his operations. He invested heavily in real estate and construction, using his devoted followers as a ready-made workforce. Small-scale operations soon blossomed into a sprawling empire of companies. While Schacknow preached about the coming apocalypse and spiritual purity, he was busy amassing a fortune. Members were coerced into working long hours for little pay, all in the name of serving their Messiah. One former member reported earning only $60 for 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. Some were told they'd face the divine wrath of God if they didn't meet sales targets. The cult acquired properties at low prices, often using free labor to renovate and flip them for substantial profits. As the operation grew, it expanded into construction, securing contracts for major projects throughout Connecticut. The exploitation of followers' labor was a key component of the cult's financial success. Members were told that their work was a form of spiritual service necessary for their salvation. This manipulation allowed Schacknow to amass significant wealth while keeping his followers in a state of financial dependence. Cult experts note that this kind of labor exploitation is common in destructive groups. By controlling both the spiritual and financial lives of their followers, cult leaders can amass significant wealth with minimal costs. As the work expanded, whispers began to circulate about its true nature. Former members spoke of exhausting schedules, financial coercion, and a growing obsession with wealth among the leadership. But for those still under Schacknow's spell, these warnings fell on deaf ears. The true extent of the work's empire was staggering. Schacknow's real estate empire expanded across multiple states, with properties ranging from modest homes to large commercial buildings. The group's business dealings became increasingly complex, involving shell companies and intricate financial arrangements. What had started as a small religious group had ballooned into a $100 million real estate and construction juggernaut. Schacknow, once a simple Navy veteran, now controlled a vast network of businesses, all built on the backs of his devoted followers. But as impressive as this empire appeared, it was built on manipulation and abuse. And as Schacknow's wealth grew, so did his appetite for control. The self-proclaimed Messiah was about to reveal an even darker side to his leadership, one that would leave lasting scars on many of his followers. Schacknow's empire of wealth was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind closed doors, the self-proclaimed Messiah was cultivating a kingdom of much darker desires. He introduced a bizarre doctrine to his followers, the idea of the sinful Messiah. He claimed that as the reincarnation of Jesus, he had to commit sin to truly understand how sin felt so that he would be able to save humanity. This was the pretense he used to coerce his female followers into sexual relationship with him. According to People magazine, which investigated the cult in 2019, Julius told followers that having sex with him was the only way they would be able to reach eternal salvation. Followers were not allowed to wear black because it was the color of the devil. Makeup for women was forbidden because Schacknow believed that it made them immoral. Followers were also given names that represent angelic quality. Some were called joy, peace, and tenderness. But if a member stepped out of line, their name might be taken away. Schacknow's public persona was that of a charismatic spiritual leader, but behind this carefully crafted image lurked a predator. As Schacknow's power grew, so did his appetite for control and sexual gratification. Former members began to come forward with disturbing allegations of sexual exploitation and manipulation within the cult. Women and young girls were particularly vulnerable to his advances. He singled them out for special spiritual counseling sessions. These sessions quickly turned sexual, and he justified this as cleansing them of their sins. He used his position of authority to coerce and intimidate his victims into silence. Experts on sexual predation in religious groups note that Schacknow's tactics were sadly common. Abusive leaders often use their spiritual authority to groom victims and normalize inappropriate behavior. The insularity of cult environments makes it incredibly difficult for victims to speak out or seek help. The full extent of Schacknow's abusive behavior was even more shocking than initially suspected. It was revealed that he had taken multiple wives within the cult, some as young as 12 years old. He used his position as their spiritual leader to coerce and manipulate these girls and women into sexual relationships, all while preaching about purity and salvation to his followers. One former member recounted, "He told us it was our duty to submit to him in every way. We were young and naive, and we believed him." She recalled being married to Schacknow at just 13 years old. She described years of sexual and emotional trauma, all justified under the guise of spiritual enlightenment. Another former member recounted to the Boston Globe that when she was 19 years old and new to the cult, she was called to have sex with Schacknow. He reportedly told her that she was ready to receive the divine seed, and this would help her become godlike. Other victims shared similar stories, painting a picture of systemic abuse spanning decades. As disturbing as these revelations were, they were just the beginning of the horrors that took place within the work. Schacknow's control over his followers extended far beyond sex and financial exploitation. He was about to unleash a new weapon in his arsenal of manipulation: fear. By tapping into apocalyptic prophecies and doomsday scenarios, Schacknow would tighten his grip on the cult in ways that would leave his followers trembling in terror and utterly dependent on him for salvation. As Schacknow's empire grew, his followers retreated further from reality. Isolated from mainstream society, they lived in a bubble of paranoia and apocalyptic visions. Schacknow's teachings took a dark turn as he intensified his doomsday rhetoric, convincing his followers that the end times were near and only those within the work would be saved. This isolation from the outside world made his followers even more dependent on him for guidance and protection. Schacknow's predictions became increasingly specific and alarming. He warned of impending nuclear war, devastating earthquakes, and divine judgment. Members were told to be ready at a moment's notice for the apocalypse. He claimed that a massive earthquake would strike California, triggering a chain of disasters across the globe. He warned of poisoned water supplies and widespread famine. Each failed prediction was explained away, with Schacknow insisting that the group's faith had temporarily staved off disaster. This constant state of fear and anticipation gave Schacknow an even tighter grip on his followers' minds. Experts on apocalyptic cults note that these kinds of predictions serve a crucial purpose. They create a sense of urgency and dependency among followers, making it harder for them to leave or question the leader's authority. The psychological impact of living under constant threat of annihilation can be severe, leading to anxiety, depression, and a distorted view of reality. As the work sank deeper into apocalyptic fervor, Schacknow's claims became even more outlandish. He began to hint that he had direct control over world events, suggesting that his spiritual power could influence global disasters. This built anticipation among his followers for an even more shocking revelation. Then came Schacknow's most audacious claim yet. In the wake of the 1986 Challenger space shuttle disaster, he told his stunned followers that he had caused the tragedy through his spiritual powers. This was, he explained, a demonstration of his divine authority and a warning to the world of the coming apocalypse. This outrageous assertion marked a turning point for the work. While many followers clung even tighter to Schacknow's teachings, others began to question the increasingly unhinged nature of his claims. As word of these extreme beliefs began to leak out, the cult found itself facing growing scrutiny from the outside world. Legal troubles and public outrage loomed on the horizon, threatening to unravel everything Schacknow had built. Schacknow's carefully constructed empire began to unravel in the late 1980s. Former members, breaking free from his influence, started speaking out about the abuse and exploitation they had endured. Their stories caught the attention of law enforcement and the media, igniting a series of investigations and lawsuits that would rock the work to its foundation. In 1987, a former member sued Schacknow for sexual exploitation, opening the floodgates for more victims to come forward. The cult's business practices also came under scrutiny, with investigations into fraud, tax evasion, and labor violations. As legal troubles mounted, the work's finances took a hit. The once thriving real estate empire faltered as resources were diverted to legal defense funds. Properties were seized, businesses shuttered, contracts were canceled, and debts piled up. The $100 million empire Schacknow had built started to crumble. Inside the cult, tension reached a boiling point. Some followers, their faith shaken by the mounting evidence against Schacknow, sought to leave. But escape wasn't easy. Those attempting to break free faced intense pressure from loyal members who saw them as traitors. Families were torn apart as some chose to stay while others fled. As more members managed to break free, a support network for former cult members emerged, with exit counselors and deprogramming experts working tirelessly to help those who had escaped readjust to life outside the work. The exodus gained momentum and the work's membership dwindled rapidly. By 1993, it had shrunk to around 50 members, a mere fraction of its former size. The once mighty cult was reduced to a small group of die-hard believers, still clinging to Schacknow's promises of salvation. Schacknow died in his sleep in July 1996, but his death would not mark the end of the cult. His most loyal lieutenants were waiting in the wings, ready to continue where he left off. The story of the work was far from over. Schacknow's death should have been the end of the cult, but for some, the nightmare was just beginning. In the power vacuum left by the cult leader's passing, a deadly struggle was about to unfold, one that would lead to a gruesome murder and shocking revelations about the true nature of Schacknow's most devoted followers. With Julius Schacknow gone, his remaining disciples scrambled to fill the void. Out of this chaos emerged Paul Sweetman, Schacknow's self-proclaimed chief apostle. Sweetman had been a loyal lieutenant for years, helping to manage the cult's business empire. Now he saw his chance to seize control. Sweetman tried to keep the work alive, clinging to Schacknow's teachings and promising followers that their deceased leader would soon be resurrected. But without Schacknow's charisma, the cult continued to shrink. Sweetman faced constant challenges to his authority from other high-ranking members who believed they should be in charge. As tensions rose within the dwindling group, Sweetman's grip on power became increasingly unstable. Then in 2004, he suddenly vanished without a trace. At first, some cult members claimed he had gone into seclusion to commune with Schacknow's spirit. But as weeks turned into months with no sign of Sweetman, suspicions of foul play began to grow. Police launched an investigation, but initially found few leads. It would take years before the horrifying truth came to light. In 2016, human remains were discovered buried beneath a house in New Britain, Connecticut. DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Paul Sweetman. The investigation revealed that Sweetman had been brutally murdered and dismembered. His body had been cut into dozens of pieces before being hidden. But who could have committed such a gruesome crime? As police dug deeper, they uncovered a web of lies, jealousy, and fanaticism that had festered within the cult's inner circle. In a shocking twist, 2 of Sweetman's fellow cult members were arrested for his murder. Rudy Hannon and Sorek Minery, both longtime followers of Schacknow, confessed to the killing. They claimed that Sweetman's wife, Joanne, had convinced them that Paul was possessed by demons and needed to be freed. The arrests and confessions exposed the depths of delusion that still gripped the work's remaining members, even years after Schacknow's death. It was a chilling reminder of how dangerous cults can remain long after their leaders are gone. As news of the murder spread, former members of the work were forced to confront the lasting trauma of their experiences. For many, the cult's deadly legacy would continue to haunt them for years to come. The murder of Paul Sweetman became a turning point for former cult members, sparking a difficult but transformative journey of healing and redemption. Survivors of the work faced enormous challenges in rebuilding their lives after leaving the cult. Many former members found themselves starting from scratch, with little money, few job skills, and a warped sense of reality. One survivor described it as like being born again as an adult, but into a world you don't understand. The psychological impact was profound. Years of manipulation left survivors struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and trust issues. Family relationships were often strained or broken. Some grappled with intense guilt over things they'd done while in the cult. But support systems emerged to help former members navigate these challenges. Specialized therapists, support groups, and organizations like the International Cultic Studies Association provided crucial resources and guidance. Recovery from cult involvement is a long-term process. Dr. Janja Lalich, a sociologist studying cults, notes it can take years for survivors to fully deprogram and rebuild their sense of identity. They have to learn to trust their own judgment again, she explains. Despite the obstacles, many survivors found ways to thrive. One former member who spent 2 decades in the cult became a successful therapist specializing in trauma recovery. "I wanted to turn my pain into something positive," she shared. "Helping others heal has been incredibly fulfilling." Another survivor found healing through art, creating powerful pieces that explored themes of control and freedom. His work has been featured in galleries across the country, bringing awareness to the issue of cult abuse. These stories of resilience offer hope to other survivors still struggling. They show it's possible to reclaim one's life and find meaning beyond the cult. But the legacy of the work continues to cast a long shadow. As we'll see, the cult's influence didn't end with its collapse. It sparked a chain of events that would expose dark secrets and challenge our understanding of justice and accountability. The story of the work serves as a stark reminder of manipulation's devastating impact. Julius Schacknow's cult left a trail of broken lives and even murder in its wake. Yet from this darkness, stories of resilience emerged. Former members found the strength to rebuild, using their experiences to help others. The work's legacy highlights the importance of critical thinking and recognizing manipulation tactics. In today's world of charismatic influencers and misinformation, we must stay alert to those who exploit vulnerabilities for personal gain. As we conclude, let's commit to raising awareness about cults and high-control groups. By educating ourselves and others on the warning signs, we can prevent future tragedies. Together, we can create a more informed society, one that supports those still struggling to break free and build a brighter future for all. What are your thoughts about the work cult? Please share in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Check out our other stories by clicking the card on the screen. Always remember, beware the leader, and never drink the Kool-Aid.